Our guest of honor today became the first mayor who was directly elected by the voters of Robbinsville in July 2005. July 1st, should have been 4th of July. He brought a business approach, actually a serious business approach, and to a tenure that has seen a stretch of unprecedented growth in this town, including partnerships with business giants such as Amazon, amazing Amazon, McKesson Corporation, Green Mountain, Walgreens, and this guy, Granger, our host, who's been our host a couple of years, great company. His business-friendly policies and procedures have allowed builders and tenants to streamline the process of zoning and ordinances and projects and getting them done in an expedited manner. He has preserved more than 500 acres of Robbinsville open space and is a longtime personal supporter of the Robbinsville Food Pantry, Meals on Wheels, Municipal Alliance for Prevention of Substance Abuse. Additionally, his hands-on leadership before, during, and after Superstorm Sandy was amazing, earned the respect of his peers and his residents and me. We all know the favorite story when in the middle of the storm he's down at the power plant banging on the door, get my power back on, and got actually, I think, sued, but gotta love this guy. So on February 14th, he presented a 2013-14 budget to the town council that has a $26 tax cut. 76, ooh, it's a typo. Wow. The second such cut in 7 years, along with the prospect of future stabilization and an additional $500,000 in debt reduction. We all think that's a good thing. He's also a local business owner and CEO of Tricor here in Robbinsville. Married, father of 2. This year he will not forget to introduce his wife. And ladies and gentlemen, Chamber of Commerce presents our Robbinsville, Mayor Dave Freed.
Try and put this on so I can move around a little bit. First, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Granger for hosting this, the Chamber, Bob. Bob was actually, I wasn't going to tell the story, Bob, but I have to. I'm just, everybody else got to tell one. So, when I was first an elected official, this is a funny one. So we actually preserved the Windsor Farm. And I got called and they said, you have to come out and say a few words. I was literally like maybe an elected official for a day. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can do this. I'd never spoken publicly before. So I get to the Windsor Farm and there's a stage and the county executive's there. And then I find out the governor's there and there's TV cameras there. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I get up on stage. I still have no idea what I said. I walk off stage, got a little ill. Bob comes up and he says, well, you're going to get better. So that's a fair point because nowhere to go from there. For those of you who are sitting up front, hopefully I have. I'd also like to thank First Choice Bank for hosting this event, and also my wife. She and I actually run our business together, and without her I would not be mayor because, quite frankly, no one would be there to run our business. So thank you. She usually doesn't get to be here today. So I know the council got introduced, but I'd really like to also thank my council. I have a really very unique relationship with our council. I've got a council who's very involved. They're engaged. They're a good group of people. They challenge me. They're not afraid to speak their minds. I get a lot of good information out of them, and it has really been a good relationship, and I want to thank you guys for coming out here today. It means a lot. Keep up the good work. Good news about having a council, they do a lot of the work, and I get all the credit, which is it's a good deal. Starting last year, we decided to start doing this speech a little bit differently. I used to stand up here and actually read, and starting last year, I started doing it off the cuff with just a few note cards. This has given the staff a little bit of fits because they have no idea what I'm going to say, and most of the time, neither do I. I actually heard Joy, she was talking, our administrator here, Joy Tazi. Say hello, Joy. I actually overheard her on the phone, and she's on the phone and she's talking to someone, and I guess they were asking her what I was going to say, and she said, I really don't know. And they're like, we have to know something. She's like, I have no idea. I gave him some cards, and this could go anywhere from the Marcio Rubio water moment to him asking you all to do the Harlem Shake. So take your pick. What I wanted to do this year, normally we talk about everything we've done. And what I wanted to do this year is talk a little bit about, who we are and some of the things that we believe in. And I think, in 7 years of government, we've learned a lot, and I've done a lot, and we've changed a lot. And, in part of preparing for that, I really wanted to ask the staff, what they thought. What are they passionate about? And the responses were really interesting. And so we decided to do something a little different this year. You probably all noticed that you have some chocolate on your table. That is actually from David Bradley, a local chocolatier. And attached are some quotes. And these are some of the quotes from some of the staff that they actually wrote from our department heads. And they were so interesting, I decided to just put random samplings. They're all different. But if you get a chance, read them. They're really, I think they're really interesting, and you'll get an idea about what they're passionate about. And since they chose to do it, I figured I have to do it also. So there were two reasons why I ran for mayor. The first was I wanted to see if I could bring a governmental approach, sort of my approach to government, or my approach to business, I'm sorry, to government. And see whether or not it would make a difference. And I think, it has. And the second piece is I really wanted to see if we could help others. When you talk about helping others, when you talk about government, oftentimes when people show up, especially at local government, when they show up on your doorstep, it's usually the last place that they've gone. They've called their friends. They've called their neighbors. They've done everything that they can do. When they show up in your doorstep, it's usually because they really need your help. And that's something that I really, was passionate about and wanted to be able to help others. And we wanted to do it when people weren't looking, when the cameras weren't on. And the stories, that happen and the things that we've done that frankly no one will ever know about, that's really what I'm passionate about. And some of the things that we've been able to do to really help people and really be interesting, and be part of their lives and change their lives. And I can't tell you, when we first started, coming from business, you just think you can do whatever you want. So my staff would always tell me early on, we can't do that, government doesn't work that way. And I think they thought that was like going to try and dissuade me from doing things. Unfortunately for me, that comes out like a challenge. Like, great, let's try it. This is a good idea. So we've done a lot of things, and a lot of them have been different. And that's, I think, what really gets me up in the morning. Probably, and Hal kind of mentioned it, one of the biggest challenges and opportunities that we've had to help others was during the Hurricane Sandy. This was an event that was, in my opinion, one of the toughest things we ever did. I don't think we ever worked harder. I'm not sure I ever laughed and cried more in my life. But I had an opportunity to see our staff do things for our residents that I never thought I would see. We were doing and helping people in ways I never thought possible. We actually went to people's homes. We were delivering food. We were keeping people warm. We were cleaning out refrigerators. It was a very interesting time. And our residents responded in a way that I never really expected. I get calls now all the time from mayors who are talking about our generator exchange. And people said, how did that happen? And it actually happened from our residents. Our residents actually came forward and said, my power's back on. And they called and said, does anyone else need a generator? And Bob was talking earlier about Facebook. Due to social media, we could immediately get out there through email and social media and ask people, does anyone need a generator? And the response was overwhelming. And as soon as the other residents realized we were now giving generators to the people who didn't have them, more people who had them and didn't need them started signing up. And it was really something that was incredible to me, because the only thing these folks were asking for in return was just that we return them. And I'm happy to admit, happy to say that all of them got back where they belong. But our police and our public works were out there, and not only were they out there delivering generators, but they were actually setting them up in people's homes. And that was made possible because we had a lot of help from the local churches. Specifically, we had the Calvary Church and Life Tree Church came out and literally, day after day, went door to door, knocking on doors, looking for people. They were looking for people who needed help. They were checking on people, seeing who was cold. And oftentimes we then knew who we could deliver the generators to later. And it was something that we probably couldn't have done any other way without their help. And I really believe when we talk about government, that's when we're at our best. Government necessarily has to be the facilitator for people to help other people. And I think that's when it really works the best. And that's something that I really felt has become a very, very interesting part of what we do and who we are. One of the other churches that I think went above and beyond were the Baptist Temple. I know some of them are here today. They're in the back. They absolutely... They did so many things during that storm, but there is one story that I just, I have to tell, because I really think it ties into a lot of what happened. During the storm, a company called Suncoast came to Robbinsville, and they were brought in from Louisiana. And the owner of that company actually sent her trucks, all of her fueling trucks, as part of FEMA, to the Northeast. And she was passionate about it because so many people from the Northeast actually went to Louisiana to help them. And I actually noticed one of the members from Bourne's moving. He'll probably remember this story because he donated the trucks. Years ago, during Hurricane Katrina, we actually sent a significant amount of supplies and police cars, and we actually brought them all there through Bourne's trucks. Thanks to Bourne's for making that happen. But they actually were so impressed with the fact that people from the Northeast came to help them, she actually sent her entire fleet of trucks. And what they were doing is they were actually refueling these cubes. And these cubes were used to run the generators at the sewage plants, at the hospitals, at the gas stations, all up the north and down the shore. And these guys were working 24/7. And as part of that process, they were literally sleeping in their trucks. They had nowhere to go. And when we met the operations manager, one of the things he asked me was, is there a place where we can have people go? Our guys haven't slept, they haven't showered. We called the folks from the Baptist Temple, and they immediately said, absolutely. They opened their doors, they had probably 70 people come in, they had cots, they allowed them to shower, they gave them the full use of their facility. I mean, it was just absolutely incredible what they were willing to do, and I really want to thank them for that. Part of the storm, we talked to the governor's office because when we adopted Ocean Springs, Mississippi back during Katrina, we were wondering, could we do the same thing locally? And the governor's office sent us the name of a town called Seabright, New Jersey. And they told us the story about Seabright, and immediately I wanted to call their mayor. And their mayor is a part-time mayor like I am, and she is a full-time school teacher. 75% of her residents lost their homes. 75% of her people are displaced. 100% of her business community is displaced. She is now responsible for rebuilding almost her entire town, in addition to having a full-time job. To make things more difficult, she also lost her home. So I could not imagine being a part-time mayor, having to rebuild my home, rebuild my town, and also rebuild my home all at the same time. So this was somebody we immediately wanted to help. We've had our public works start reaching out. One of the things that they needed were inspections so that we could have our people help them start getting their people back into their homes. We've started a gift card program because one of the things that the mayor wanted to do is really help the people who needed the most help as they started being able to get back into their homes. So we've actually got that on our website. If any of you are willing, please go to our website. They really need gift cards. These folks really need to rebuild. This is one of the towns that was really hit the hardest. So this is something that we are very passionate about, and it's going to be a long process. They're going to need a lot of help, and we're going to be going there quite often, and hopefully we're going to do everything we can, and I know our residents will respond as they always do, and we're already seeing gift cards come in, so I'm very, very grateful for folks for doing that. During the hurricane, we also had some challenges. Hal mentioned that I'm not shy when I'm not happy. I know Jerry Accardi from JCP&L is here, and he has sometimes been on the end of that, but I will say this for Jerry. Jerry is very open, and he is willing to tell me things even when I don't want to hear them or not what I want to hear, and I'm not an easy guy to tell what I don't want to hear. But I will say this. I have been very vocal about our power companies and all of our public utilities, including water, for a couple of reasons. A, I have two power companies in our town. We have JCP&L, we have PSE&G, and I expect both to perform to the same level. And I expect it because when you think about those utilities, they're so important to us all in all of our lives, but they've also got an incredible advantage. Both have a monopoly. And I really believe in choice. I think people should have choice. Being an entrepreneur, I believe in the free enterprise system. People have the right to choose. And if you don't have the right to choose, then things will never improve. And think of it this way. Imagine we had two restaurants in Robbinsville. Half the people had to eat there every day, and one was pretty good. And the other was not so good, or maybe even less better. No, not less better, that's not a word, but you get the idea. Why would the one that was mediocre ever want to improve? What would be their incentive? If everyone had to eat there every day, there would be no incentive, right? They knew they were going to have the same customers every day, day in and day out. And add to the point that they also were allowed to pass along their losses to us. Whether those losses were self-inflicted or not, acts of God, they are allowed to pass their losses along to their customers. So let's make this restaurant analogy a little bit more. Not only do they have to eat there, but they served you bad food. And they let you know that you're going to be sick. And by the way, unfortunately, tomorrow when you get there, they're going to have to charge you a little bit more because they have to order new food. Now, you're all kind of smiling right now as business owners. Wouldn't you love to have a business that you were guaranteed to make a profit no matter what you did? And that's the reason why I feel I can hold the utility companies accountable. Why? Because they have a huge advantage. A, they have guaranteed customers, and B, there's no choice, and C, they are going to make their profit regardless because they can pass their losses along to us, no matter what happens. So I think we have the right to say they have to be great at what they do. And I'm going to continue to push for that. And I will say this, Assemblyman D'Angelo is here. I want to thank him. He has done a really good job, and he has actually been passionate about the fact that he also thinks people should have the right to choose, and he's been holding people accountable. And Wayne, I thank you, and your office has been absolutely amazing, so thank you for coming today. Hey, listen, I was nice to you, right? I normally introduce him as our third favorite assemblyman, which he one day was talking to my police chief. He says, you know, does he have to do that every time? The joke just never gets old. Chief said, well, that's how you know he likes you. One of the other big wins, and Hal, you mentioned it, was also Amazon. And Amazon was something that we're very proud of. It took a long time, and we really had to do a lot of different things to make that happen. The real credit for bringing Amazon to New Jersey goes to Governor Christie. I can't take credit for that, but once they started coming out and deciding where they wanted to go, you know, we were hopeful that they would choose Robbinsville. And when we think about what happened with Amazon, everyone thinks, well, what happened during, you know, that period while we were negotiating with them? And the fact of the matter is the Amazon story really started 7 years ago, because we really had to think about how we were going to be able to make taxes sustainable, how we were going to make Robbinsville sustainable. And when we looked about how we could bring in new ratables, we had to think about what we could be great at. And I knew at that time that most of the major retail had gone either to East Windsor or to Hamilton. So the idea that Route 130 would become some sort of a retail mecca for us probably wasn't going to happen. So as we thought about what we could be great at, this warehouse park was one of those things. And we realized we had great infrastructure, a great location with 195 and the Turnpike, and we had to think about how we could start attracting companies like Grainger. And we needed to make a process, and that was the first step. At that time, Robbinsville didn't necessarily have the world's best, most business-friendly reputation. So that was the first thing we had to change. We had to make a process that was fair. The second thing we had to do was we had to invest in staff, and we had to make sure that we had really great people. And you know, the department is headed by Tim McGuff, who was sitting here. I know we got introduced earlier, but we have Ann Bell here and a bunch of our other staff, and we wanted to make a really good process. Why? Because what big companies want is predictability. They want to know that we can get them in on time and on budget. And we have done that time and time again. And I believe that when we started talking to Amazon, that was one of the reasons why they chose Robbinsville. Yes, we had a good location. Yes, we had a good story to tell. But they're going to build 1.2 million square feet, and it's going to be open in the spring of 2014. It is a really big job, and we have to have the people and the resources to make sure that they get in on budget and on time. And I believe we do, because we've made those investments over the last 7 years. And I think that's why one of the reasons why they chose Robbinsville. And that choice is going to be amazing. When you think about what that means to a town like ours, it will bring in $20 million over the next 20 years. And for a town that has a $20 million budget, it's a really big deal. Amazon's also going to bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,500 to 2,000 new jobs. When you think about what that means for Mercer County, that is going to be an incredible prospect for us. During the holidays, this is going to bring in somewhere in the neighborhood of an additional 400 jobs. Tim McGuff talked earlier about the fact that every kid that comes home for the holidays is going to have a place to have a job. And we're very, very excited about this, because this is going to allow us to do some serious things in terms of tax stabilization. And when we talk about tax stabilization, we've got to talk about the budget, right? And I think I'm like the only person in Mercer County who is doing these State of the Townships that's actually willing to talk about their budget. Everyone else seems to be letting that one go. We have a really good story to tell. We're actually going to be cutting taxes in Robbinsville. Thanks. And we're cutting taxes about 4%, which is 2 times cap. And when you think about that possibility, it was done because of a lot of work that we've done over the years. But what we really wanted to do was, when Amazon came in, we always talked to our residents about what ratables mean. And it's a difficult conversation because when you talk about ratables, they don't really see it. You know, they hear that, yes, when we bring in ratables, it has a positive effect on taxes, but they very rarely ever get a chance to see it. This is one of those years where we had lightning in a bottle. Instead of when the revenue came in, finding new ways to spend it, we decided to give it back. And we also decided that we were going to pay down debt, because there has been a huge trend in government, both at the federal level, the state level, the local level, to become more and more dependent on debt for our spending. And the challenge for that's going to be, sooner or later, A, we're going to have to pay it, and B, there's going to be, as the interest payments go up, there are going to be less and less money for us to be able to provide services. And that is going to create one of the worst situations for residents possible. Why? Because they're going to have high taxes and less services. And that is going to become harder and harder to explain to people why they're paying more and getting less. So one of the things that we really wanted to do was we wanted to be sustainable. We wanted to make our township be sustainable, and we wanted to be able to hold the line on taxes. And it's been hard. We've done a lot of things that no other towns have ever done before. You know, as I stand here before you, we were the only town to ever take over a fire district. That saved our township $1 million a year. We took over our MUA. We eliminated lifetime health benefits for new hires. Why? Because we couldn't sustain it, and we knew we couldn't do it in the future. We've been out front on a lot of different issues, and we were willing to go out front even when they were not popular. Why? Because as I talked to our staff, I told them we have to be sustainable. We're going to have to do things differently. And as I talk to them now, when we see towns that are cutting back and doing layoffs, the conversation's easier. 4 and 5 years ago when we were having these conversations, no one really believed it. But today, it's become evident. Why? Because as everyone else is cutting back, we're in really good shape. And they realize that this has been a really good thing for our township. Our budget has been something that we have been working on, for years. And we really are proud of where we are. And I could tell you, when I took over as mayor 7 years ago, Robbinsville had the fastest growing taxes in Mercer County. Not a real pleased with that distinction, right? But that's what we had. We were growing faster in taxes than anyone else. Today, we have the most stable taxes in Mercer County. And I'm willing to bet you we're probably one of the few towns that are actually going to be cutting taxes this year. So really, really proud of that, and I want to thank our staff for making that happen. They've made a lot of sacrifices over the years, and this is what we were working for. One of the challenges that we've had this year is, and some of you know, we were actually in a lawsuit. And the lawsuit involved this conversion bill. Wayne, I know you voted no, so you get a pass on this one. But the legislature has given us some really bad bills in their days, but this one I think is probably one of the worst. Robbinsville is a town that doesn't get its fair share of state aid, and everyone knows that. Our schools are not fully funded. I think Steve Mayer's here. Steve, you can $7 million below adequacy. Thank you, Steve. You managed to get that right off. That wasn't even rehearsed. This is an incredible thing. Plus, the town has significant growth problems. I mean, when we look at what's happening in the town, our town is fast growing. The school has got overcrowding issues. Steve, you've done an incredible job managing that. And to think that in a community that has overcrowding, is $7 million below adequacy, does not get its fair share of state aid, that the legislature would give us a bill allowing us to turn senior housing into regular residential. It's like offering a drowning man a glass of water. I can't understand it. It's mystifying to me, and you'd think that at least at a bare minimum, if they were going to do it, they would attach some aid to it. They didn't. This bill is something that we've challenged twice in court. I really didn't think we were going to win, but we had to try. And the reason I didn't think we were going to win, because it was a bad written bill, and the judges are interpreting the law, and the law is the law. I do think we have a chance at the Supreme Court, because I believe it took away the town's right to choose. And when you think about planning and zoning, the one thing that always happens is we have the ability to have the public have input. We notice all of the neighbors so they can come out and they can talk about whether they're for or against whatever's happening. But they have the ability to have some say. They have some input to feed back to us. This law took away the ability for anyone to have any input. So I believe it was unconstitutional, and we are going to ask the Supreme Court to take a look at this bill and see what they think of this bill. I don't blame, I know Charbel is here today, I don't blame Charbel for taking advantage of the law, because they had every opportunity to do so. But I do think that the legislature gave us a very, very bad bill. Secondarily, I'm also very thankful to Charbel, because they are willing to talk to us about the possibility of preserving this space. And I think that's something that the town should definitely take a look at. This is the last large 400 acres that we have in town, and I see John Semino's here from the Freeholder Board. The freeholders and the county executive have been very good to Robbinsville when it comes to open space and recreation and other things too, but specifically since I'm on open space, John, I'm going to stay there because I'll probably be calling you for some help if we decide to do this, and thank you guys very much for everything you do. This property will be very interesting, and if we can preserve this, I also think it would be where we put our fields in the future. The property is located between our fields on Community Park, which are our soccer fields, and our baseball fields off of 130. Anybody who's had two kids with two sports and who has made that trek between the two fields, they know exactly what I'm talking about. This would be a great place to put new fields. So I'm hoping that we can preserve this property. We're going to be working with a number of people to do so. And we will be asking the school board for some help and some input, because I really believe if we have an opportunity to preserve these 150 units, this will be a good thing for our town. It will help out with our overcrowding, and this will actually give us a very, very nice piece of open space. And it's one of the last large parcels we have left. One of the other challenges that we've had this year, the shopping center where we formerly had Morazzo's. This is a center that we've been trying very hard to work with and to try and make something happen. We lost Morazzo's some years ago, and the tenants of this park have been really suffering. Without an anchor in that park, it has been very, very difficult for them to do business. So one of the things that I'm going to be asking for over the next couple of weeks is to ask the council to please take a look at putting the Morazzo Shopping Center into area in need of redevelopment. I think it's time. I think those shop owners have waited long enough, and I think it's time for us to help them. Chris Siacchio and Sherry McGowan have been working on redevelopment for the south side of town center, and then we also use redevelopment to help attract Amazon. And I think this will give us a tool to attract a really good anchor into the Morazzo Shopping Center, and then we can turn that shopping center around and we can give it a facelift. Anyone who wonders what an old shopping center that has actually done a really good job of turning it around just has to look at the Texas Roadhouse in Hamilton. That was a very old and tired center, and today it has done an absolutely amazing job of literally reinventing itself. And that's something I hope we can do at Morazzo's. So I'll be calling on the council to start working on that in the next couple of weeks. When we talk about Morazzo's and open space, one of the things that I like to talk about is the Foxmoor open space that we just purchased. This was a parcel that I had planned on putting our municipal building. I really thought it was a very interesting idea. We own the land. I thought it would be a great place for us to put up a 3-story building. We could take the top floor. We could then rent out the bottom floors. And I thought it was a really good idea until I told our residents. They unfortunately did not think it was such a good idea, and actually hosted a number of meetings to tell me they didn't think it was a good idea. And their concern was that they'd be able to see it from their homes. So I actually went out in the middle of the night, I stood in the field, and sure enough, I could see the lights in their porches. And they were right. If I could see their homes, odds are they would be able to see this building. And this is something that I've learned about politics and want to talk a little bit about. Whenever you have to change your mind, when an elected official has to change their mind, they are typically reluctant to do so. And the reason is because then you become labeled the dreaded flip-flopper, right? You've all heard it. But the fact of the matter is, when we're, as an elected official, one of the most important things that I think you have to be is a good listener. You have to be willing to listen. The second thing you have to be willing to do is to try new things. And if you're willing to try new things, there will be times when some of your ideas are not such good ones, as I learned at this place. So what we decided to do is we actually turned the development into a park. And we've actually allowed the people from Foxmoor to actually plan their own park. So they are now planning the park that's going to be next to their building, and it has really turned into be a really good idea. And it really is a reflection on what's happening with politics. Because I don't believe, when we look at Washington today, I don't believe there's a lack of good ideas. I don't believe there's a lack of people who are willing to try new things. But there is a group of elected officials that I think have a different agenda. And I call them the waiters. And they're not the people who brought you your food. They're the people who really do nothing. They have no real plan. They don't really ever do anything except one thing. They wait. They wait for somebody to come up with an idea, and then they tell you why it won't work, why it won't happen, why you shouldn't do it. And unfortunately, that's become a symptom in our politics, and that's why people are often reluctant to come up with the first idea, because as soon as they do, they know what's going to happen, so they wait. And that, unfortunately, has become a real problem in politics, and this is one of the things that I've really learned, and we, collectively, we have to say it's okay for people to change their mind. We can't be afraid of the dreaded flip-flopper. We can't be afraid of people coming up with new ideas, because without new ideas, we're in trouble. Now, I always tell people in my business, and I'm sure every one of you have seen it, right? Resisting change is like holding your breath. Sooner or later, you will die. We have to embrace change, right? And as elected officials, we have to be willing to embrace change, but it's hard. And what we need to do as a people is tell them it's okay, and make it okay, and let it be okay. And that's one of the things that over the last 7 years that I've really learned. Be a good listener, be okay, and be okay with being able to say, I was wrong. That was really a bad idea. One of our other initiatives that we started last year, and it's a kind of an interesting segue into, was our Keep It Local program. This was a concept that we originally came up with, and we thought, you know, we're going to encourage our residents to shop locally. Seems simple, right? But as we started talking to the business owners, we realized they wanted something more. They wanted to be able to really be more involved, and they wanted to make a program that actually made a little bit more sense. So as we started talking to them, the business owners wanted to be able to give back. So we came up with a different program, and the program really is the business owners have the ability to actually give a portion of their proceeds back to our local charities, to our soccer community, to our baseball community, to our Little League, to our charities. And the shoppers are going to be able to direct where they want the proceeds of their purchase to go. And this is really a unique idea because now we're really involving everyone. We're going to be able to have a strong business community. We're going to be able to create jobs. We're going to encourage people that they have to shop locally because these are people who really took a chance. During our first meeting, you know, I told a story about how I started out in business. In my first company, I started right out of college. Chris is laughing already. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was 21 years old. And I couldn't get any bank loans, so I immediately started doing credit cards because I didn't know any better, actually. But as I started, you know, the business started growing. We were actually number 20 in 1998 of the Inc. 500. And one of the events that I got to go to where the 20 companies were actually sat around and talked. And one of the things that we did that evening was called the Light of Living Dead. And essentially they all told their biggest and worst business story. And they were amazing. And I told that story to some of the folks at the Keep It Local meeting, and afterwards, so many of the business owners came up to me and started telling me their story. And people are laughing, right? Everyone who has a business has a story, right? And the stories were really incredible about, you know, how they put everything on the line. And we as residents sometimes don't realize just how much business owners risked to start their business. They put everything on the line. They've invested everything that they have. And I think as I listened to some of these stories, some of them were talking about what their grandfather did, and they're in the third generation. If they hadn't done that, their business wouldn't be here today. And as I started thinking about the Keep It Local campaign, we're going to start telling those stories. We're going to start spotlighting those businesses because I really want people to know who they are, not just what they sell. And this is something that I think, you know, as we get more and more involved, you know, we're getting very, very passionate about. Janine Semino is here. She's been helping us with this. You know, she's been listening to some of these stories. So this Keep It Local campaign is something that we're going to get very much involved in. We're going to have billboards. We're going to be putting up signs. And we're really going to be encouraging people to take part because I think it's something that's going to mean a lot to all of us. Lastly, I'd like to talk a little bit about, you know, our staff. We have an incredible staff at Robbinsville. They do an amazing job, and we have built an amazing team. And I can't say enough nice things about the people that we have. And you know, when you think about government, it's really all about who. And who they are is really what makes our township who we are. It has been an absolute honor to be mayor. It's one of the things I am really most grateful for. I've been able to see an incredible amount of things. I've been able to watch an incredible amount of people. And I've been able to be involved with so many people's stories. So it's something that I am incredibly grateful for. I want to thank you all for coming.